Over the past year, we traveled the country visiting American farms, and something great came of it. All because Reagan and Massey gave farmers a platform to share the history, the business, and the people that together have created their farm's identity. This project has uncovered the reality of what many farms in the country have to go through, and it's been long overdue. With our country losing an average of 28,000 farms a year, what better of a time to tell the stories than now? So we'd like to thank you for joining us on our travels and inviting these farmers into your living room, just as they have done for us.
Any fire and any enthusiasm. We don't know, of course, because we're not privileged to have inside information about Penn State football, but on the outside, that's the way it appeared.
It certainly did, and we asked the question post-game to Matt, is it possible James Franklin lost that locker room? Didn't ask you this question. Did any staff that you were a part of ever lose a locker room when you look back at the decades-long career as a football coach?
No, I'm confident in saying that. Coach Fry never did, and I was with him for 21 years, and even in our last year in Iowa, he still had complete control over the players. The players still liked and respected Hayden Fry. That didn't change. And I'm proud to say it in my 11 years at Western Illinois, that was not our issue ever, was the relationship between players and coaches. That was not part of the problem.
What can you say about James Franklin? He was in this conference for 12 years almost. So he is one of the vets in the league, sort of like Pat Fitzgerald. When he was relieved of his duties here just over a year ago, it seems like the conference has been shaken up of some of their older coaches, the more experienced coaches in this league, Kirk Ferentz being the exception to that rule. What can you say to James Franklin's tenure there? He's the second most winningest coach in Penn State history.
Yeah, I regret to say I don't know him on a personal level at all. Of course, I've seen him interviewed a lot. And, the conversations Kirk and I have had about James Franklin are going to remain privileged. I'm not going to talk about anything that Kirk and I might have said about Coach Franklin. But I wondered, as you observe other coaches, some of them you feel it's really easy to like them, and others it's not quite so easy. And my perception of James Franklin, he's not a real easy guy to like. And I'm not, again, I don't know him personally, but that's just the perception I had of him versus other coaches in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I made the comment yesterday when the news broke. I can't speak for Kirk Ferentz, but if there were two coaches in this league that Kirk would not want to sit down to dinner with, I think it would be James Franklin and PJ Fleck. I don't know how he feels about, the guys out west, but I know he's got a lot of respect for a lot of coaches in this league. Those guys just rub you the wrong way if you're not a fan of those teams. Yeah. In my opinion, PJ and James, maybe to some extent, but especially PJ, you don't like to see a coach that tends to make it about himself.
Correct. That was my objection, and I observed that same thing. One of the things I learned years and years ago when I was at West Point, those people that you're supervising or that you're leading, be sure that they feel that they have a say in how this whole thing's going to play out too, and be sure you always remind them it's all about them. It's not about you as the leader. It's all about them. In the case of a football team, of course, it's not about the head coach. Everybody knows who he is. A good head coach makes it all about the players. That's what Kirk does so well. I like to think that that's what I always did very well. And you can't help but feel, as you mentioned, Cory, they make it a little bit more about themselves than they do their team. That's the perception you have as an outsider.
Give me an idea as I know you haven't dealt with this, what we perceive to be a lost locker room, but you have been through, maybe give us an example. Have you been through head coaches being fired and you remaining on the staff for a time? Has that ever happened?
No.
Okay. All right. Bad question. Bad question.
I've been privileged. I had one head coach for 21 years and John Hayden Fry. And then, as you know, Cory, I became a head coach, and I was a head coach for the next 11 years. And then along came tonsillar cancer. Didn't get to coach for a while. And then I returned to coaching, coached 5 more years. But neither one of those coaches got fired while I was on staff. We had good success at Buffalo. We were bowl eligible in year 3. And I hate to say this, but I ended up needing a lot more money if I could get it, and I got it from UConn. I got a significant raise to go to UConn and be the assistant head coach. And the only regret I had was leaving behind Jeff Quinn, who had done a good job at University of Buffalo. Sadly, a year or 2 later, he was fired. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2. And then in the case of UConn, we were bowl eligible in year 2, and I retired because I was 65 years old and had some health issues. And the very next year, Coach Diago was let go. So I've been lucky. I haven't been part of a fired coaching staff in that regard.
I do want to kind of give some people some breaking news. If they missed this news here earlier today, it's been reported by a number of outlets, not to totally switch gears because this is a football-centric show, but to break some degree of news here that Iowa men's basketball forward Tavion Banks is facing legal repercussions after allegedly getting into a fight with staff at a different establishment here in the Iowa City area. The reason I bring this up, not because you coached a guy named Tavion Banks. That's not why I bring it up. But we're talking about coaching, and I'm curious. I'm wondering this evening how Ben McCollum is reacting to this. Tavion is an experienced guy with his program, transferred in from Drake with Ben McCollum. And I know you dealt with a number of disciplinary issues with players, as all coaches do. If you're Ben McCollum, how are you handling this situation right now with Tavion, one of his experienced guys?
Fight with staff, you mean staff at that business establishment?
Those are the allegations. Those are what's being reported by a number of media outlets.
Well, one thing that I always talked about with my team, Cory, I made sure they understood, and the expression I used to use is the tail will not wag the dog.
Well, while I attempt to make a correction to our audio, we're just going to go all natural here for a second, Don. So the folks here on StreamYard can hear us. I'll try to get this corrected, but let's kind of pivot a little bit. This is the beauty of live broadcasting. So again, bear with us, folks. John had a question in the audience. He's one of our loyal listeners who who tunes in regularly and drove up here from Ottumwa. And he had the question for us. He had the question for you regarding the new Big Ten look and the 4 teams that were added from the West Coast, one of which being UCLA, who's got 2 straight wins under its belt with a new head coach, a new interim head coach. While I'm trying to get the audio figured out, can you maybe answer John's question as to how you feel about the new Big Ten, the fit now that we're a couple of years into this new experience, and what you think the future looks like for those 4 programs? Obviously, Oregon coming off a loss, but they've been really good.
Right. They have been. Can everyone hear me okay a little bit? I hate that travel is such an issue in this conference. Imagine if you're Rutgers on the East and you have to go play at California, at Oregon, at Washington. That's a difficult trip. But here's the good news. Those that want to use that as an excuse to not play well, there's 2 great examples last weekend. Indiana at Oregon. That wasn't supposed to happen. And then to go the other direction, How about UCLA at Michigan State? That wasn't supposed to happen either because you're supposed to not be able to play well because of the travel. Don't make too much about it. Just adjust your schedule accordingly and do not make a big deal about travel because invariably people will tend to use it as an excuse. There is no excuse for losing a football game. Just deal with it.
Yeah, deal with it. Deal with it. That's going to be our theme for tonight. Deal with it. So again, I know there's a number of people who are waiting on hold to be heard. We're going to keep you guys on hold in hopes that I can get this sound issue resolved and we can take calls and have everybody be able to hear everybody. So thank you, everybody here in person. Barbara, you have a question here in person.
Yeah, actually, I was listening to Luke Fickell's press conference today, and a reporter asked him about they assumed he met with his leadership team, and he said he hadn't, and that just tells me he's lost his body. I mean, that's what I think. I think it's Monday after the big loss. He hasn't met with his.
Well, if things weren't going well, I think it would be even more critical to meet with your leadership team. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was shocked.
Yeah, for people who couldn't hear Barbara, they're asking about Luke Fickell and where he's at. And I think there are a lot of people coming off this James Franklin firing are questioning, how do you fire a guy like James Franklin who's had all this success and Luke Fickell's had no success at Wisconsin? It all comes down to expectations, right? I don't know what Luke Fickell's buyout is. That's obviously a huge factor as well. But talk a little bit now that we're removed from that game on Saturday, Don, with Luke Fickell and that 37-point loss for the Badgers, the state of that program and how they try to move forward.
Well, I can remember very well the days of Barry Alvarez and the days of Brett Bielema. And I think Wisconsin simply forgotten their identity. The way for them to play football is the Barry Alvarez way and the Brett Bielema way. And somehow they decided that's not good enough. We need to be able to throw the ball around more than what we've done in our history, our recent history. And of course, that you better know what you're doing before you change. I always had an expression that I always reminded our coaches, never change for the sake of change. You better be sure that the change, you've given it a lot of thought, and there's no doubt in your mind that change is a good and necessary thing. In this case, they made a change that actually blew up on them.
They certainly did. And the one guy we didn't talk about Saturday, who I thought looked pretty good, was Dylan Jones, their running back. And that's a position where they've had so much tradition. We didn't really probably give him enough kudos. I thought he ran hard. And
I remember at one point in the game, he had 6 attempts for 41 yards. That's almost 7 yards a carry. And he also ran hard against Michigan the week before. Because I made a comment, he's a good back.
Yeah, he is. And you feel bad for the quarterback for Wisconsin. He had 3 turnovers that really just sent that game into a spiral. Played pretty well in the Big House the week prior.
He did.
I think you told me prior to the game you did not expect him to cough the ball over as much as he did early. I mean, you just don't expect that out of a guy who went to a really difficult place to play and was composed. Is that pressure playing in front of your home crowd a little bit?
Well, let's face it, as an old quarterback coach, sometimes interceptions are really not your fault. You know, you think you have a throwing lane, the last second, a big old paw from a defensive lineman gets in the way, and when the ball goes up in the air, there are more eyes playing defense that see the ball than there are eyes from offense seeing that same ball, and invariably, it usually ends up in the hands of a defensive player. That's what happened last Saturday night.
Okay, so I'm gonna toss a question to you, and then I'm gonna try a couple of troubleshooting things here. So feel free to be long-winded, Don. You know how to do that?
I'm pretty good at it.
Okay. The dynamic with Penn State, right? Down your coach. Now you have an interim coach, a guy who, by the way, worked with Franklin for the majority of Franklin's time there, I believe, since day one. 2014, I believe, was the year where he was hired, and then he was promoted as the associate head coach in 2021. So give us an idea for what you expect as far as a coaching staff rally. Like, how do you envision that right now behind closed doors is happening? How do the coaches that are still there rally those guys And if there is toxicity with some of those players that perhaps, whether it stemmed from Franklin or not, how do you weed that out midseason?
Well, the thing that comes to mind for me, all you got to do is look back at UCLA in the early season. They lose their coach, I believe, after 3 games. And then the interim coach, if you've seen him interviewed, seemed like a really nice guy. Is it hard to imagine those players actually like him? He's an easy guy to like. And lo and behold, here UCLA is playing like a different team. And they've done it now for the last 2 games. So I'll give you another example. How about the interim coach at Michigan? It appeared that the players liked Sharon Moore. They seem to play well even in the absence of Jim Harbaugh. So that's a couple of examples. If the interim coach is a guy that they like, and he's going to emphasize, let's just have fun. The pressure's off. Our coach has already lost his job. Let's go out and make him proud. Let's make your mom and dad proud, too, for how well you can play football. Let's go out and enjoy the game. A wise old coach once said, you don't work football, you play football. So go have fun. That's part of the game. The people that sometimes are too tight are those that forgot that you're supposed to play the game. You don't work the game, you play the game.
Rant over.
Yeah.
Rant over. Good stuff. Okay, so one thing that Penn State is known for, at least in Iowa City, is coming up and playing Iowa tough. Whether you're talking about the 2017 game, the Saquon Barkley, Josie Jewell battle that ended with the last second catch by Juwan Johnson. I believe it was 2019 they came up to Kinnick and kicked butt under the lights. Iowa has had some success in Kinnick. I think way back when, 2008.
We've had some success in Happy Valley, too.
They have 2020, 2009 would be a couple of examples. What effect does the crowd and being in Kinnick have on this team with a new quarterback, an interim head coach, and a foundation that has seemingly crumbled?
Well, I bet a lot of our listeners felt like I did before Indiana came to town. I wasn't worried for a minute about Indiana embarrassing an Iowa football team. We were not going to fold up like Illinois did. I can especially say that in Kinnick. In Kinnick, we don't just have 11 players on the field having everything to do with us winning. We have 68,000 people in the seats also having something to do with us winning. Believe me, the players respond to that. They do. And it didn't surprise me at all that Indiana had trouble getting out of town with a win, which is a little bit of luck. Of course, we would have beaten Indiana. We weren't so lucky, but let's take that fact forward to this Saturday night. I don't know how much experience the Penn State quarterback has in a hostile stadium, but not nearly as much as Drew Eller had. And I'd like to say, it wouldn't surprise me at all if that quarterback in Kinnick, with crowd noise that we're going to have on Saturday night, if that doesn't really bother at least the signal caller for Penn State, the guy taking snaps. I think that will bother him. I think it would bother anyone that's never played in a big game on the road.
Yeah, and we've seen, I think back to 2021 was probably the obvious game at Kinnick that I didn't mention. The noise level, right? The noise level in Kinnick. And, one thing that comes to mind is that north end zone. How much of an effect has that north end zone had? Barbara sits in the north end zone. How much of an effect has the construction on that north end zone had on noise?
I think it's had a lot. Before the north end zone was completed, the one that used to give us problems was the north end zone in Columbus, Ohio, the shoe. If you think about how that stadium's configured, that north end zone has seats, a lot of seats, but they're also very, very vertical. The seats in the upper deck are not that far from the field. And our north end zone's a little bit like the north end zone of the shoe now. I think any visiting team will tell you, you don't want to have to drive into the north end zone. If you're lucky, you're going in the south end zone. Maybe that's a little better. On the other hand, our students are down that end of the field, and the students do a good job of defending that goal line too, just like our north end zone fans do on the other end.
Okay, we're going to keep trekking along here. I'm trying to still fix our issue so that we can be a little bit better volume-wise, but I think it's better than the alternative of having whatever that noise that was coming through our speaker here a little bit ago. So, yeah, we'll keep trudging along here, folks. If you have a question in the chat, I know we got hundreds of comments, so I've not been looking at the chat. Thank you for being here, Amanda. Looks like she's rejoined as a member, so thank you for that, Amanda. We do appreciate your support as always. And I'll tell you what, we're going to take a couple of calls here, and if we need to kind of just repeat the questions, we'll kind of keep these questions relatively short so that we can be as efficient for everybody who's watching online as well as in person. So we'll go to Doug, who's online with us. Doug, welcome to the show. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, I know there was a question about Mark's health. You don't expect any – he's healing up. He's doing better, right?
Yeah, Doug's asking about Mark Gronowski's health. Yeah, I don't think any setback. I didn't hear about any setback on Saturday. We'll get Kirk tomorrow. But I complained enough Saturday about how long he was in the game. Right. You know, I would have liked to have seen him taken out of the game earlier, but it appeared that he made it through that game without any setbacks.
I would assume that he'll be this Saturday night physically a lot like he was last Saturday night. There's no doubt that the game took a little bit of a toll on him. Obviously, they felt he was healthy enough to be allowed to play, but I don't think there's any way he'll be anywhere near 100% for this Saturday night. It'll be something less again. Watching him, I was a little bit concerned against Wisconsin because he certainly appeared to be significantly less than 100%. I think he was running at maybe 80%. Hard to assign a number to it.
Yeah.
Maybe only he could do that. But it's safe to say he was not as mobile as we've seen him in all those earlier games.
He's less effective. I mean, he's not the quarterback that we saw against Rutgers. Even the good parts of what we saw against Iowa State, et cetera. He's just not the same guy. So how much does that change the offense moving forward against the likes of Penn State, at USC, Oregon coming to town if he's immobile? They were obviously able to run through Wisconsin without much help, without much needed help at quarterback.
Right. Well, we hope we don't have to jeopardize his health by requiring him to run the ball. I'm talking about called plays for the quarterback to run. Obviously, he's going to, because of no receiver to be found and because of pass rush, there are times when he's going to pull the ball down and trying to make some kind of positive yardage and scrambling. That's just part of the game. He's going to do that. I don't think he'll do it quite as effectively as we've seen in the past, simply because he's not at full speed. Something a little bit less than that.
Two Penn State questions.
See if I can, as I'm talking here, I'm hearing myself in the our mixer, so I'll know if I have the microphone up. You don't have to hear this, Don. Don't listen to it. It's still not good. So we've got some garbled audio. Is there anything else, Doug, that you wanted to ask while we have you on?
My question is, who is their interim coach, and does that matter what his position was before as far as what he would emphasize?
Yeah, he's asking about who is the interim coach, and that's Jimmy. Don't have it in front of me.
Terry Smith.
Terry Smith. What did I think, Jimmy? Terry Smith. He's got some history at the FCS level. I asked you prior to the show if you had any history with Terry Smith. You said no. Thank you for the call, Doug. But he's been with James Franklin a long time. Also was with Matt Rule at Temple.
I might have coached against him when he was at Temple. Probably did, because I did coach against Matt Rule when Matt was at Temple and I was at UConn.
Yeah.
But I don't know Terry personally at all.
Okay. Let's go to James. James has been on hold for a long time. James, welcome to the show.
Oh, how you doing?
Doing good.
I only got one question. Like, it kind of reminds you of, obviously, I know, was it Clifford? It was Clifford, right? Got knocked out that game when they put Taquan in, right? It was Clifford.
You're going to have to speak up a little bit, James.
It was Sean Clifford that was the quarterback when they put Taquan in, right? When he got hurt.
Taquan? Are you talking about Taquan Roberson?
Yeah, he came in when it was Clifford was the quarterback, right?
Yeah. Taquan Roberson came in. He's bringing up 2021 when Sean Clifford went down with the injury. Taquan Roberson goes in and, of course, had 2 or 3 false starts down in that north end zone. And that was kind of my point in bringing up the noise effect, James. because that is a factor with that north end zone and just Kinnick as a whole. And it is different than any other Big Ten venue if you visit these different venues, such as the Big House, where the fans aren't right on top of you. The layout of the stadium obviously contributes to good sound if you're Kinnick and having that very vertical north end zone.
The only
Go ahead,
difference is he has the whole week to prep. Taekwon got thrown in, when he got hurt.
Yeah, he does have
Grossmeyer has the whole week to prep, but
Yep. So he's talking about the Penn State backup. What can you tell us about him?
I can tell you he had one snap last week.
Yeah.
On fourth down, he went for -1 or 2. I can't remember.
Yeah. So they were likely going to lose without Aller, even if he'd been. I mean, maybe they convert that fourth down and get in field goal range, but you tend to think not. But to James's point, unlike Taquan Roberson, who came in for an injured Sean Clifford during the game in 2021. This guy has an opportunity. I'm sure they'll simulate noise. I know it's not the same, but they'll simulate noise in their practice facility. How much does that help you when you're going into a really loud venue to try to simulate that?
It's still not as loud as game noise. They can crank it up all they want. It's still not quite the same. It gives you some idea of what it's going to be like being on the road. But it's an adjustment for any quarterback. It obviously interferes with a lot of communication. You may get false starts. You might get a busted protection call because somebody simply didn't hear well enough. Things like that. You may get the wrong route because maybe the communication, again, wasn't heard on the receiver out on the flank of the formation.
Yeah, James, go ahead, James. You got one more?
Thank you. Go to your next caller. I appreciate it, and hopefully we can get this one. Obviously, we should, but the run game scares me a little bit in the fact that they like to run the ball a lot, and I trust our defense, but they still got K-Tron on, and then they still have Nick Singleton. So at the end of the day, you still have probably your two best players anyways. If you don't count Aller as your best player, right? So it's still going to be a dogfight no matter what.
Yeah, thank you for the call, James. He's bringing up the running backs for Penn State. Really talented pair of backs, a couple of guys who can play at the next level.
Ask you, Cory, just to share with the fans roughly what the question is.
Yeah, James is asking about K-Trell and Singletary, two-star running backs for Penn State. Both guys who I think were on mock drafts prior to the season, or at least I'm assuming they were. They're big, strong runners. They've not been as effective running the ball during this stretch, but they really haven't been effective doing anything. They've also not been effective stopping the run. Yeah. But if Jaden Harrell's not playing this weekend, he didn't play this past weekend, this is going to be a bigger test for Montgomery, for Shire, for people like Zach Lutmer, because they were gashed a couple of times last week. Those are going to be things on tape that Phil Parker and Kelvin Bell and Seth Wallace are looking at to try to remedy, because they got a good pair of backs coming to town.
I did hear a while back, this is before last week's games, that there might be a little controversy involving the two backs because K-Trell had been significantly more productive than Singleton. And I think the previous year, their carries were pretty even, and yet there was some argument on the part of the fans, why don't you give K-Trell more snaps and give Singleton a lesser role? I don't know if that was done last weekend or not, but obviously there might be a little bit of an issue there with one player or the other being unhappy with their playing time. I don't know. That could happen. Obviously, the mindset we always had, I hate for anybody to just have one good back, because that's not enough. You need to have a great number 2 back, and for that matter, a number 3 back, because the luxury you have, if you have 2 or 3 good backs, you have to never, ever find yourself in position to play with a tired running back. And an experienced running back coach, of course, you got a good back for making that substitution at all the right times. Betts did that a year ago for us. And I don't know if it's being handled quite as well this year as Liddell handled it, but that's understandable because Liddell was a pro at being able to do it, in part because he was a former NFL running back, of course. So he had a good handle on how to get that done.
Okay, Bob Hoffman, thank you for being a premium member, Bob. We do appreciate that. And Aaron Vodder in the chat says, I better treat you to some cookies because you're doing a great job talking to the audience. For people that aren't familiar with you're not new to live on-location appearances. You have spoken at the Quarterback Club a number of times, right?
before every home game.
Before every home game. So give us an idea what that's like, and can anybody attend that?
I'm sorry, you said quarterback club.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a club here in town called the Garden Club.
Garden Club.
That's
Yep.
a very misleading name. The Garden Club is a pep rally for old guys. That's what I call it. And Marv Cook and I always speak at all those Garden Club luncheons. We talk about last week's game a little bit, and of course we preview the game for the next day. And I thoroughly enjoy doing it, as does Marv, because so many of those Garden Club members have been great Iowa fans, maybe ever since I coached here, and that was 1979. That was a long time ago. But some of those Garden Club members were there even when I first came to Iowa. And it's a lot of fun. We get together. If you're lucky, you know somebody in the Garden Club, and maybe they can invite you to be a guest at one of those Garden Club meetings. I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun, very entertaining. It will get you ready for that next day's kickoff.
Donna, I think this is probably a good time here. We're about 40 minutes in, and we haven't talked about analytics yet. That's your expertise. It's something that you still work hard at for Coach Ferentz and Coach Parker and Coach Lester. And now that we're into the Big Ten schedule, several games into the conference schedule, give us an idea for analytics this weekend. I know there's some things that you just will not share for sake of competition, right? Give us an idea, and those folks who are listening online and who are here, what key analytics will you be monitoring this weekend?
Let me start off, Cory, by talking about analytics as it relates to Wisconsin. I don't mind talking about analytics that relate to previous games. I just hate talking about them before the next game.
Good.
But just to give you an idea, right now we've played 28 conference games. I've broken down every game, 25 different parameters in each and every game. 28 times 25 would be 700. That's 700 independent evaluations in those 28 games. And it's complicated. I've always been really good at numbers. And the way I describe it, if you've seen the movie Moneyball is one of my favorite movies. And when people ask me about analytics, I describe it as Moneyball for college football. That's what I do. So just to give you a simple example, I was able to share with the coaches, here's the results on all the games that have been played. Last week at this time, it was 19 games. We had 9 more games last weekend. Now we're at 28 games. So I've got numbers on all those games together. Every conference game that's been played up until now, they have the information on those games. Beyond that, I also did what I call a bowl evaluation on Wisconsin. So it's the same approach you take to a bowl game. You just want to zero in on that one opponent. And so what I did last week, I took 13 games involving Wisconsin, 11 of which were against conference opponents. I took all 9 games a year ago. They were 3-6 in those 9 games, I might add. I added to that of last year the game against Alabama. That's 10 games from a year ago. And then I added in the 2 conference games they played this year before the Iowa game. And I added in Alabama again. That makes a total of 13 games. When you look at all 13 games, only one parameter identified the winning team in all 13 games. That's what you're looking for. Because that parameter identified the winning team 100% of the time. I don't mind sharing with you what that parameter was last week. As I told the coaches, you don't have to outrush Wisconsin. That's the good news. The bad news, you better be sure that you have more total offense. Because if you have more yardage overall, you'll have won all 13 games. Well, we had gained by 110 yards last Saturday night, and that's one reason we won the game. That parameter now is 14 for 14 as it relates to Wisconsin football. If you want to beat them, outgain them. And I admit it did help that we were +2 on turnovers. That made it easy.
That reminds me, one thing we didn't cover Saturday night was the pick thrown by Mark Gronowski into the first quarter. I don't know why we didn't cover that. I guess 37-0 and, But obviously that's something that you're going to look back at. Tim Lester's going to look back at and say, we can't throw that pick. It wasn't a case of Mark being hurt and making a bad decision physically. It didn't appear. What was going on there? Because on television, I think from the average fan's perspective, it looked like it was just a horrible decision to throw in a tight place where there were two defenders.
Yeah, first off, it was a lengthy throw. The ball was going to have to be in the air for a while. And when you make those kind of throws, one thing you have to assess, the nearest defender, how is he in position to threaten the ball? In the case of the play last week, the interception, the defender was low enough, when I say low enough, underneath the route of our receiver going down the field. His only opportunity would be to undercut that pass. That's exactly what he did. So Mark has to assess, if I'm going to throw this ball, I have to be sure not to leave the route a little bit short, because it's going to be undercut by that defender, and it very well may be intercepted. If he's a threat underneath, now I'm going to put the ball further down the field so that only we can get it. It might be overthrown, but it's going to be safely thrown. Not going to be underthrown, because the underthrow might be intercepted simply because the defender's in position to undercut the receiver. That's what happened. So the assessment, if he's going to throw it, put it further down the field so that we're the only ones who can get it. It's either going to go incomplete or it's going to go into the hands of our receiver. It will not be intercepted because it was undercut. So it was a poor decision by Mark. Should have been thrown.
Erica's in the chat. She wants to know, do you have a Hayden Fry story related to Penn State specifically?
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, anything specific to first of all, did Hayden have a good relationship with Joe Pa?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Any Joe Pa Hayden stories?
Well, one of my favorite memories of playing in Happy Valley, I don't even know the year, but I bet somebody here remembers what year it was even. One of my favorite memories, it was not even an offensive play. It was a punt return by Tim Dwight, and it went right in front of Joe Pa. Joe Pa could have made the tackle if he wanted to, or maybe not. He might have been injured on the play. But anyway, Tim went right down their bench. The length of field, it was probably a 60, 70, 80-yard return for a touchdown. And I'm pretty sure we won that game. I don't remember the score, but I'm pretty sure it was a winning day for Iowa football. Tim had that effect on a lot of people, as we know. So that's a fond memory I have playing in Happy Valley. We had a game years ago in Happy Valley. This is way back in the 80s, maybe 83, 84, something like that. We beat Penn State in Happy Valley, and this didn't happen back in those days. It was a score fest. I think we beat them something like 42-34, something like that. Nobody put up 40 points on Joe Pa back then, but we did. Somebody do me a favor and look up the year. I think it might have been 1984. That's been a while. I can't recall the exact year.
Well, Hayden, how would Hayden, we've probably asked you this before, but how would Hayden react if he knew, what college football's turned into with NIL and the amount of money that's being thrown around and transfer portal? You've been asked this a number of times, I'm sure, but how would Hayden react to all of this?
Well, you have to realize Hayden grew up without a lot of money too. He's fond of. I'll give you an Hayden Fry story. Maybe this will place our. When Hayden was a small child, he lived on a farm. One of his duties every morning was to milk the cow. Hayden enjoys telling the story. He goes out to milk the cow. It's probably dark outside. Maybe it was in the summer. Maybe it was light. But anyway, he wasn't really that excited about it anyway. So long story short, he comes back to his dad with half a pail of milk. And you have an idea how Dad reacted. Dad looked at the milk, shook his head. Hayden got, lectured a little bit on how to milk a cow. And he said, Hayden, never forget this. You milk it till it's dry. You milk it till it's dry. Here's that same story relating to calling football plays. If you have a good play, don't forget about it. You call it again. You might call it 3 times. But don't forget about it until they prove to you that they figured out how to play it. You milk that till it's dry also. So that's my story about Hayden as a kid. I think Hayden would have been disappointed we're in this spot now because he grew up with the scholarship being simply room and board, tuition, and books. That's a scholarship. And we all know it costs a lot of money to go to college. So even in the old days, the players were very appreciative of that scholarship because that meant it's going to be a lot easier for mom and dad to be able to come watch them play because they didn't have to spend money paying tuition fees, room and board, and books. But we're in this position now. Something seriously wrong if we can recruit simply by offering more money to a player. That's a horrible situation. I'll put it to you like this. A lot of you know who Miss Terry is. Are you familiar with Miss Terry? Miss Terry is married to Nick Saban. That's Nick Saban's wife. And recently Nick mentioned this. They had a tradition of feeding the recruits on Sunday morning on official visits. And one Sunday morning, Miss Terry asked Nick, why are we doing this? And he asked her, what do you mean? Why are we doing it? And she said, now the players are more interested in how much money you can pay them or how much playing time you can guarantee them. And it used not to be that way. We never had to answer those questions years ago. And Nick said, you know what, you're right. And shortly thereafter, Nick Saban said, I'm retired from college football. That's a true story. So I think Hayden would be disillusioned, and Hayden would have probably long since retired, even if he was lucky enough to still be coaching.
All right, there's a couple questions here in the chat. If anybody has a question here in person, feel free. I mean, the show has totally gone off the rails, so there are no rules now, all right? I shouldn't say that when there's beer within reach, but 1983, all right.
And it was 42-34, September 17th. I got the score right. That's pretty good.
42-34. Okay.
Sometimes I'm off by a point or two.
Okay, so there are a couple of comments in the chat that I want to get to before we move on. One being there's a rumor out there, and rumors are what rumors are. Sometimes there's smoke, and that means fire, but there's a name being thrown out for the Penn State job already. Maybe you know where I'm going with this. And there's actually a couple names being thrown out there. One being Matt Campbell from Iowa State, another being Matt Rule at Nebraska. That one surprises me a little bit. I mean, Matt Campbell's name is going to keep getting brought up regardless of what job is open. If it's a high major job, his name's going to get brought up. But real quick, what has Matt Rule done?
Matt Rule is from the state of Pennsylvania. I believe a Penn State alum.
I don't care. He has done nothing at Nebraska.
Well, the name you're going to
that would be a horrible hire.
The name you're going to bring up is the name that would be at the top of my list.
What name am I going to bring up?
Nick Saban.
Oh, well, Nick Saban. Is that a realistic? Do you really think Nick Saban would come out of retirement to coach at Penn State, of all places?
I think he might.
Why do you say that?
I think he misses the game. Now, the problem, of course, you've already heard me say, Nick Saban doesn't appreciate the predicament we're in right now with NIL and transfer portal. That's probably one reason he wouldn't do it. But otherwise, I think you might be able to talk him out of retirement to do it. For a chance to go back to the state he grew up in, he might do that. Let's face it, they talked Bill Snyder out of retirement. He came back and turned K-State around a second time. And Nick Saban himself said that's the best coaching job ever is Bill Snyder at K-State.
Thor wants to know what I'm drinking. So, Don, what are you drinking?
I was hoping it was Coke, but I believe it's Pepsi.
So Don's got a very boring answer, and that's fine. That's fine. This is Big Grove Brewery's Easy Eddie. So I'm being pretty easy, being pretty simple tonight. I'm trying to see what everybody else has. What do we got over here at this? He's got a Pepsi, and you guys have. Okay, all right. What about you guys back there? Cider. Citrus Surfer. Okay. I had that here a couple of weeks ago at the Big Grove in Des Moines. So it's all great. So we appreciate Big Grove making the space available. And I promised everybody we'll get the audio fixed and we'll be back here. We'll keep doing this. First time with new equipment. So it's always a question. Our first show in Des Moines kind of went off without a hitch, but there's going to be problems somewhere. So
we'll keep doing it until we get it right.
Yeah, we will keep doing it until we get it right. I had a question for you, Don, about Penn State and about the administration. What do you think the last 48 hours have been like there in the process? I know there were rumors regarding their athletic brand, Adidas. There was a viral social media post that was out there, I think it was yesterday, that somehow Adidas was coming up with $50 million to supply. That has since sort of been debunked.
Right.
But again, how much do you really know where that money's coming from? What do you think the last 48, or I should say maybe the last week, because there were some rumors after the UCLA loss. What has that been like? What's the decision-making process for an AD in charge of determining, is this guy the future, and are we willing to spend $50 million to get rid of him?
Well, the problem with social media nowadays, you don't know what to believe. There's no doubt there's a lot of disinformation out there. And in the case of Penn State, I don't know what's true, but I do know this based on previous history. Sometimes when there's a coach that's at least in jeopardy of losing his job, sometimes it's made easier, the decision's made easier because a well-positioned donor comes forward to the LA department and says simply, I'm going to help you make up a decision. Here's $10 million toward that money we need to buy a guy off. I'm not saying that happened in the case of Penn State, but it would not surprise me if that might have happened. I have no idea as to what the numbers might be, but it wouldn't surprise me if a few well-positioned donors made it an easier decision for Penn State.
By the way, people, I don't know what it sounded like on there when the whole sound system went off the rails, but people said you went from Don Patterson to Darth Vader. That was the comment that was made. I'm seeing that multiple times. In fact, our guy Kyle texted me that and said, yeah, you sounded exactly like Darth Vader. So perhaps they'll cast you in the next Star Wars film.
Let's hope not.
Okay. Let's see here. Question from, let's see. This is a question maybe for people here. Obviously, Big Grove would be at the top of the list here. But what places do Hawkeye fans recommend checking out before the game Saturday? So I'm assuming this is coming from a Penn State fan who's visiting Iowa City maybe for the first time this weekend. Big Grove Brewery would have to be at the top of the list. I don't know if anybody's a coffee drinker here, but is there any recommendations for coffee shops in the area? Don's not a coffee guy. Anybody have a coffee recommendation? No? Java House. Java House is really good. We'll give them a free plug. So if you're a coffee drinker, Java House. If you're a beer drinker, Big Grove. And Big Grove Brewery is the official brewery of Iowa, of the Hawkeyes, and the official watch party headquarters of the Hawkeyes. They just opened a brand new location in Omaha. So if you're listening over in Omaha, we plan to hit that location as well without Darth Vader. We will do that and hopefully do a live show from the Omaha location. And Big Grove continues to expand.
I'm not invited to Omaha.
Well, you're welcome to come to Omaha. You're going to go you're not going to the Nebraska game. Anybody here going to the Nebraska game this year at Lincoln? No? I'm sure people in the chat are. Erica, super chat, thank you, says it's true the channel became from the Hawkeye of the Darth Vader for a bit. So we appreciate that. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back in about 60 seconds. We appreciate Big Grove for being with us, making this possible. And we'll be back in about 60 seconds with Coach Patterson and myself right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Let me introduce you to one of the proud supporters of From the Hawkeye of the Storm, Iowa floor covering down in Bondurant. Now, for the last year and a half, you've heard me talk about this great company in the heart of central Iowa. They've got their tough core, click together, 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring, great for you DIYers out there. But even if you're just a contractor or you need a different type of flooring, they've got you covered, whether it be tile showers, carpet. Give Iowa Floor Covering a chance to serve you better and serve your flooring needs. Visit them online at iowafloorcovering.com. That's iowafloorcovering.com, or you can give them a call at 515-379-7000. That's 515-379-7000. Thank you to Iowa Floor Covering in Bondurant. Straight from the man cave, Kinnick under the kitchen. Randy Engel a longtime supporter of the Hawkeyes and from the Hawkeye of the Storm, has created so much licensed, authentic, original Hawkeye artwork featuring so many of your favorite Hawkeyes, from Brad Banks to Reese Vanderzee, from Chuck Long to Caleb Johnson to Spencer Lee, and the list goes on and on. Be sure you check out the Under the Kitchen art stand each year at Fry-Fest. Visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook and check out the entire selection of signed and unsigned prints available at underthekitchen.square.site. That's underthekitchen.square.site. Check out Under the Kitchen today and get your authentic, original Hawkeye print. We are back here live, Big Grove Brewery in Iowa City. We hope everybody can hear us loud and clear. Again, we're trying to raise our voices for the folks who've come out. And I guess it'd be a good moment to thank the folks who have come up here. I know our good friend John came from Omaha. What am I saying? Ottumwa. I got Omaha on the brain, but he drove up from Ottumwa. I know we've got some folks from Cedar Rapids.
He's not sure of Peyton Manning, I guess.
Yeah, from Peyton Manning. Wilton. Where in the world is Wilton? Okay, all right. And where are you folks from? North Liberty. And Vince, you're from Minnesota, right? That's Vince back there, isn't it? Mm-hmm. He can't hear us. He's got his headphones on. He's actually listening to the broadcast back there. You're good, Vince. And where are you from? Okay. Yeah, he's from Minnesota. So he's down here for the we got men's and women's basketball media days coming up this week as well. I won't grill you on basketball questions, but we did cover the Tavion Banks news with women's basketball media day coming up this week as well. I know you're a big women's basketball fan. People that don't know that, you go to a lot of the games and watch, I think, every one of them. What are your thoughts on the success that Jan Jensen has had on the recruiting trail here of late, and also success year one leading into year two?
Well, it looks like we're a national presence from this point forward. We've been one, of course, ever since Caitlin's early years, especially. And thanks to Jan Jensen and her staff, and thanks to our players, I think our success is going to continue. We're going to be challenging to always be in the Final Four. And that's difficult to do, but I think it's a realistic goal to think we can at least maybe be in the tournament every year and maybe Sweet 16 or better every year. That's something to shoot for.
Okay, back to football for a second. There are a couple of questions in the chat about Kurt Signetti. A few days removed from their win out at Oregon. And of course, Iowa nearly beat the Hoosiers 2 weeks ago. So it makes you feel a little bit better about Iowa's performances to this point, I guess.
Right.
Were you surprised that Indiana was able to go out there and take care of business against the Ducks? I had Oregon covering. I'm not a betting guy, but I make my selections with our Voice of College Football team, and I had Oregon covering. Not only did they not cover, they lost by 10. Right. After what you saw from Indiana in Kinnick, you were at that game. Are you surprised that Indiana was able to go out there and beat Oregon the way they did?
Well, I think even the Indiana players and coaches would tell you one reason they played well at Oregon is because they were exposed to Kinnick Stadium prior to Oregon. That was a good preparation for the trip out west. They were put under the gun in Kinnick, and they responded well and beat us. You could argue that we lost the game because what are the odds that Drew's going to miss a field goal, or if we convert on that 3rd and 5, at the very least we got a new set of downs, and then it would be a chip shot field goal on the last play of the game. Assuming he hits it, the game would be over. So I think after the interception, I think the odds of Indiana winning that game were no more than maybe 20%. And at that point in time, I think Iowa would win it 4 out of 5 times, if not higher. So Indiana was lucky to get out of town. And I think that was a great preparation for Oregon. They played well against Oregon. They did. They looked the better team. It was not a fluke, incidentally. You want to talk about parameters for winning? I'll just give you an example. Indiana. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Of the top 15 parameters, Indiana won 12 of them. Oregon won 2.
And against Iowa, how many parameters did Indiana win against Iowa when they came to Kinnick?
They had a slight edge on us. It was close.
Okay.
But a slight edge, as I recall. You'll find this interesting. Northwestern at Penn State. you might assume since Northwestern won the game, they won most of those parameters. They did not. Northwestern won 6 of the top 15. Penn State won 8 of the top 15. But here's the rest of that story. The advanced version of analytics, every year I come up with a prediction model that zeroes in on 5 parameters. And if you win the majority of those 5 parameters last season, you won the game 96% of the time. Where it was 73 wins and 3 losses. Almost a sure thing. Any 3 of the parameters. I should say more of those 5 parameters than the opponent. Maybe it's 3-2. Maybe a couple of parameters are ties. So maybe it's 2-1 on the remaining parameters. The reason I bring it up, that game Northwestern at Penn State, even though Penn State won 8 of those top 15, Northwestern won 4 of those 5 parameters. And that's why they won the game. So those are the ones that, and honestly, I give the coaches a report, typewritten report, it's maybe 60 pages long with all kinds of information in it. The last page in the report is simply an explanation of those 5 parameters. Because let's face it, the players don't need to know all those 59 pages that are in front of it. They just need to know that last page. Because those are the parameters you need to concentrate on, because history says it all but guarantees the win. If you simply win more of them than they do, doesn't matter which one, any of them. That's the beauty of the system. So that's what I came up with. Incidentally, one reason it was only 96% last year, 1 week remaining in the regular season, the winning percentage was 97. Do you know why it dropped to 96 on that last weekend? Because of Nebraska, Iowa. Because Iowa didn't deserve to win the game. We won it anyway. You don't win a game when you make 5 first downs, and they make 20. We pulled a huge rabbit out of a small hat. We won the game, and that even defied the prediction model. So you don't want to risk that. But I'll remind you again, talking about turnover margin, one thing I've learned, +1 against a really good team might not be good enough. I would say if you're playing Oregon in Iowa City, we better be at least +2 to be safe. Let's take you back to the Nebraska game. We were +1 in that game with 1 minute to play. What happened in that last minute? We became +2. And that second turnover really mattered a lot. It was a strip sack that set us up in field goal range, and that led to the game-winning field goal. So +2 is better than +1. That's a great example of it.
And for Penn State this weekend, Don, we've seen Penn State teams that were pretty well-founded with their coaching staff, with their quarterback, struggled to come into Iowa City and score.
Right.
And we saw Indiana, Miranda Mendoza, all Big Ten receivers. They struggled to come into Iowa and score. Had Phil Parker not kind of thrown caution to the wind there at the end, they probably don't score that last touchdown. And it's 13-13 heading to overtime. I don't necessarily blame Phil for that because of the circumstances, but the point is Iowa's defense really stymied up at home.
Right.
What is it that's different about – we always hear that it's hard to score on the road. What is it about Kinnick specifically going on the road in this conference that makes it hard to score?
Difficulty in communicating. That's the number one, I think.
And so is that, for people that don't know, is that Jaden Montgomery as the Mike linebacker stepping in for Jaden Harrell? Is that on him? Like, was that on him this past weekend in Wisconsin? Coming in with his first career start, is that the majority of that communication come back to the Mike?
I don't know exactly how they communicate on defense. Offensively, of course, the QB gets the call during the huddle. He mentions the huddle call, of course, and then they break the huddle. Defensively, I'm not sure how they do it. It wouldn't surprise me if we still get signals from the sideline.
The reason I bring that up is because we've heard, obviously, the Penn State quarterback, center, those guys are going to have a hard time hearing each other.
Right.
But at the same time, when that crowd is loud, it also affects your defense, the home defense, right? Because they're going to have a harder time communicating through noise. So how do you deal with that? And what do you tell Jaden Montgomery if you're Seth Wallace, Phil Parker?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not going to see our defense huddle up like our offense does,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I'm suggesting to you there are signals that come in from the bench. Every player in the field is responsible for seeing those signals.
Good stuff. Folks, if you're new to our show, we have post-game coverage after every single game, and we'll be live for another late-night show this coming weekend. The night games, they don't affect you, they affect me. As I tell people, you don't sleep. You're just a machine.
Not much.
And I do need to sleep, so
It's overrated.
yeah, sleep is overrated for some, I guess. But we are here each and every post-game show. So if you're tuned in on YouTube, we're on this channel after every single game. And we also have a special treat for, 6 of the last 7 games. He won't be with us this weekend, but for the final 5 after that, former Hawkeye defensive lineman Matt Kroll. If you missed our show after the Wisconsin game, really good stuff from Matt. And what a game from those defensive linemen, whether you're talking about Bryce Hawthorne or Aaron Graves with his interception. I thought Max Llewellyn did a nice job getting home and putting pressure. We saw Brian Allen get a deflection that led to the Bryce Hawthorne interception. Was Wisconsin a bit of a coming out party this past weekend against the Badgers? And then can you turn that into success against a young guy on Saturday?
I made this statement about last week's game. I was privileged enough to coach 425 games in my 37 years of coaching. Honestly, I cannot remember a single game where not one but 2 defensive linemen had interceptions. I can't remember a game. Maybe there was one, but I can't recall it. It's very rare. I would say it's probably 1 game out of 1,000. It's very unusual to have 2 interceptions on the part of the D-line.
Yeah. And I see Doug's comment in the chat. Why do I feel so confident that this team is going to beat Penn State? It is weird how 2 weeks can change how the tenor of a fan base. I will say this. I have a lot of respect. Again, not a gambling guy, but I have a lot of respect for the smart people that make those betting lines because they're usually right on.
Right.
If you follow that stuff, they're usually right on. But this past weekend, I said, I have no clue why the line is Iowa 3.5 at Wisconsin. And I took Iowa big against the spread. They won big against the spread. This week, Iowa's I believe it opened as a 3 or 3.5 point favorite against Penn State. So the exact same as last week. But you usually get 3 points, 3.5 points for being the home team. So on a neutral field, Vegas is telling us this is a pick 'em, right? So I guess for the final segment of our show today, Don, you gave us some analytics, I think, to kind of keep an eye on. But what are the big storylines besides just can Penn State rally with an interim head coach? What are the big pieces of this game Saturday that you're going to be watching?
There's so many uncertainties going into Saturday. It's difficult. Even if I come up with some really good analytics based on Penn State's games, the problem with that, of course, is the principal players are changing and changing now. They're going to be different than they were a week ago. So different QB, that's a concern. Different head coach, that's a concern. One of the things I wonder about, one of my old grad assistants is Penn State's offensive coordinator. I know Andy Kotelnicki. My fear is that they might be more aggressive with their play calling than they've been, if only because he may be given free rein for how to run the offense. If that's the case, I promise you, they're going to be more difficult to defend because Andy, he learned a lot in his days with us, and it certainly made him a very, very successful coach. And I don't know what's happened. Penn State's much more conservative in recent weeks than they were even a year ago. I remember Andy when he was an offensive coordinator at Kansas in his previous job. And if you follow Kinnick football, they were really, really good on offense 2, 3, 4 years ago when Andy was there. That's why he was hired away to Penn State, of course, because he did a great job at KU. So I am wondering what we're going to get. I don't know anything about the quarterback. I don't know anything about how the decision making is going to be. Obviously, that interim head coach, he might say, no, Andy, I want to be more conservative than what you want to be. I'm the acting head coach, so you're going to respect my wishes just as you always respected Coach Franklin's wishes. So I'm not going to lie and just call willy-nilly how the game's going to go. I'm going to have a lot of say as to what we're going to do in any and all situations. So we won't know how it's all going to play out until Saturday night. It's going to be worth the price of admission, though, I can promise you.
And you brought up Ethan Grunkemeyer, who will draw his first career start. And for people that don't know, he was a 4-star prospect in the 2024 class. So,
let me get that name right. Ethan
Grunkemeyer.
Grunkemeyer. Sounds like a guy that might be playing trombone in the band. Ethan Grunkemeyer.
Surprisingly, didn't have a ton of high major offers. Had some. Had a bevy of Big Ten offers. UConn offered, former you coached for that program, right? But didn't have a ton of high major offers. But he will draw the start. One thing that was said, I know I've listened to a few people who cover Penn State closely, and one of the thoughts with Andy Kolenecki and his success at Kansas is that perhaps Drew Aller didn't fit the mold of what Andy would like in a quarterback, a guy who's more mobile, athletic. If people have watched Kansas football over the past couple of years, they've had a lot of success with a mobile quarterback, athletic quarterback. So Andy's not had that. Ethan Grunkemeyer, I mean, it's hard to be less mobile. Aller's not maybe like a Callie McManus, but he's not a real mobile threat.
Right.
So how much Grunkemeyer can carry the football, that might actually help Andy with play calling this weekend.
One thing I'm sure is that our defensive staff has spent time looking anywhere and everywhere for video on the new quarterback, because there's simply not much to go on. I wouldn't be surprised if we looked at some of his old high school video, even in preparation for the game.
Well, folks, we will be back with everybody on Saturday talking about this game, and hopefully an Iowa win. Don, if they win this Saturday, I know people don't like me talking big picture, but they've got Minnesota coming to town after that. They should beat Minnesota. Knock on wood, right? We got wood in front of us. Knock on wood. They should beat Minnesota. Obviously the toughest games remaining after Penn State, Oregon, USC on the road. Nebraska on the road is difficult, but you get Michigan State at home. They got some goals in front of them still.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're, I know Kirk's not necessarily always a big picture guy, but he did acknowledge last week during his media availability that they do talk about that each week. They spend a short period of time talking big picture. You bring it up this week because this is a big stage they're walking into, even though it's a wounded Penn State team.
Right. We got 6 remaining regular season games. I always use this as an analogy. Those of you that know about track and field can appreciate it. Running through a Big Ten schedule is a lot like running a hurdle race. You got to focus only on the next hurdle because any of those 6 remaining hurdles can trip you up and cost you a race. So you're focused simply on the next game, nothing beyond that. One at a time. That's the way you got to do it. And sometimes it's good to give them a reminder that makes sense to them. Anybody that's run hurdles, I promise if you don't focus on the next hurdle, that's when you take a spell. So we'll concentrate on the next hurdle. We'll see where that takes us. But as you know, our success is in our own hands, even now. We're sitting on 2 losses. I think it's safe to say if we manage to run the table, there's no doubt we're in the playoffs. And oh, by the way, if we win those playoff games, I do believe that's the national champs. Ohio State said it's okay to have 2 losses. It worked for them last year. And we're not nearly ready to win that, but maybe we can get there over the next 6 weeks. It's something to shoot for.
As I've said many a time, I know people get angry for some reason when I bring up playoff, but if they win every game from here on out, they're national champions.
Right.
They're not getting left out at 10-2. I don't think. I can't imagine a scenario where that happens.
No.
And right now Oregon's got a loss. Penn State's out of it. For all intents and purposes.
Let me make this comment. The only worry I have about being 10-2, I'd prefer that we not play in the Big Ten championship game because that's a potential loss. And the loser of that game, if it's their 3rd loss, they're probably out. So I'm okay.
The problem though, here's the problem. 10-2 likely gets them to Indy. I don't know that for sure, right? But
I don't know. Maybe not. Is it hard to imagine that Ohio State and Oregon can be 10-2? To name 2.
No, we'd be talking about an 8-1. That'd be an 8-1 Big Ten record, is what I'm saying. That's an 8-1 Big Ten record.
They both get one? No, Oregon's only got a loss in the conference.
No, I'm saying Iowa. Iowa
Oh.
would have an 8-1 Big Ten record.
Gotcha.
So
You're right.
a 10-2,
That would
8-1.
put us in Indy.
I think that's likely, and it's possible you have an undefeated Ohio State team as
Right.
one of the, and then maybe you lose a tiebreaker scenario. That actually might do Iowa a favor.
So here's the more realistic scenario. If we're lucky enough to be 10-2, here's the bad news. We need to be 11-2. We'll worry about it after we're 5-2.
I never imagined that I would be talking about a scenario where you want 10-2, but you don't want a chance at the Big Ten championship. But that's where we're at now with the expanded college football playoff and how things work. And yes, it's premature, but you know what? We can talk about it as, talking heads, retired coaches, because we're not there on the insides. We hope that obviously Kirk's got his locker room, in control, so he's not talking about these things. But big picture-wise, they still got a lot to play for. So
one thing I can guarantee you, they're only focused on Saturday night.
Yep, absolutely. Well, folks, we appreciate everybody being here. And again, apologies for the audio issues. It's one of those things you hope don't happen, but when they happen, you have to pivot and find a way to recover. So, but let's hope let's hope Penn State doesn't pivot and recover this weekend.
Let's hope they recover not as well as we did.
Yeah, exactly. And I again, thank you to everybody for you all coming out here tonight. It's very much appreciated. We'll do this again. And for Big Grove Brewery, we appreciate them giving us the space and giving us an opportunity. Do you have a question before we wind down? Okay, he's going to wait till we wind down. Folks, thank you all for being here. Please keep it locked into our platform because we'll have media day coverage from men's and women's hoops and also more preview coverage prior to Iowa, Penn State, and then, of course, post-game show on Saturday featuring this guy right here, Coach John Patterson, and yours truly. Thank you for being here, folks. Have a great night. We'll talk to you soon.